Welcome to the Castro Valley Compass, navigating your week through Castro Valley. Brought to you by the Castro Valley School of Music. We bring music to life. For information about private and group music lessons, call 510-397-0721 or visit us at cvsom.com. And now, here's your host of the Castro Valley Compass, Shane Sharkey.
Hey, welcome to the Castro Valley Compass. I'm your host, Shane Sharkey, and on today's episode, we're going to feature an interview I did with a gentleman named Walt Gresham. I first met Walt because he was a mailman here in Castro Valley for a very long time, and he retired a few years ago. But when I first met with him, we had these really deep conversations about life and philosophy and all kinds of interesting things. And Walt's one of these guys that you meet and you just can't help but like. He's a really supportive guy. He's very interesting, and he's got a lot of interesting insights on life in general. I think you'll notice that when we go into the interview here. One of the things I really like about Walt, he's a very, very giving person. He's a generous guy with his time and his thoughts, and he does a couple support groups here in Castro Valley, both men's and women's support groups. We'll talk about that in the interview. And if you're inclined to want to get involved in those support groups, please let us know through an email here at info@castrovalleycompass.com. That's the same email that you can use if you'd like to be a guest on the show or if you'd like to suggest any guests for the show. So anyhow, hopefully you'll enjoy this interview I did with Walt Gresham. Here we go. All right, well, I'm going to officially welcome you, Walt Gresham, to the Castro Valley Compass. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Shane. It's just an honor to be here and spend this time with you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And, you and I, let's maybe go back to the time that we first met was at a previous location for the school, and you were delivering the mail.
Right, right.
How long have you been a mailman, or how long were you a mailman in Castro Valley?
I was thinking about that because I knew that I was going to come on. I think I would say like a good 20 years.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you retired a few years back?
Yeah, it's, actually this month it's been 4 years.
Wow. How is retired life treating you?
It's good, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Big difference, I bet, from...
I mean, I didn't think that there would be a bit of a moments where I didn't know what I was doing, but they showed up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because you're just so driven, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you, and then you kind of have to figure out your purpose and what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What are you doing these days that give you a sense of purpose?
I'm running a men's and a women's group here in town, and created a safe space for the men and the women to come and share what they're carrying. And then also I've implemented that through the sharing that we all be healed from what we've shared, and also like energetically clearing out ourselves from whatever attached to us during the meeting. Yeah.
So it's like a group of sharing experiences to sort of lighten the load, so to speak?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to really look at it. I think, too, I don't like to put it quite in that perspective, but I'm trying to place a lot more emphasis on us being healed together as one kind of collective group, through the experieners.
Right, maybe helping us all realize that we're not necessarily alone in this crazy world.
We are all one.
Yeah, well, that's pretty powerful. I mean, to be able to come to a group of it, I imagine these are all strangers to begin with. They don't know one another, but then after a while, they start to get to become friends, maybe? Yeah,
also what I've noticed is that, especially with the women's group, they'll be like, oh, I have a friend that I'm going to bring, and so it just seems to happen pretty organically. And also, we're let's see. Well, I mean, it doesn't work for everybody. It actually works more for people that are a bit more spiritually advanced, so to speak, because the purpose isn't to just have it be a dumping ground. Right. It's more about for us to be, healed and cleansed through the meeting.
What kind of spirituality? Is there a specific viewpoint, or is it just people that are more spiritual overall?
Yeah, overall, I mean, I'm not one to, in particular say this religious group or, your beliefs aren't included, but because I respect all religions, I think they all have a purpose and for each one of us, and they serve the purpose through the people that are going to church or, whatever religion they're attached to. So I think it's just putting more of an emphasis on us just, living and coming more from our higher state of consciousness.
So is there meditation involved?
Yeah, I have an opening meditation and then a closing meditation, which is focused on us, being healed and detaching from anything that's attached to us in the meeting. So really specific about, quite a ways into the both meetings, I was like, wait a minute, I got to clear these people out because I don't want to send them home carrying a bunch of junk from the meeting. So at that point, I realized that I needed to really put a strong emphasis on cleansing people out after the meeting's over. So when they get home, they're not carrying, that energy with them to the house.
Right. So what sort of things do people share? And I don't need specifics, but is it like just difficulties of everyday life and relationships?
Yeah. I was thinking about this before I came down, and, we're all struggling. Yeah, it's just part of human nature. Like, we struggle. And, that's not to say that one person's struggle is any more important or greater than another. We're all struggling in our own ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine that the people in the group provide a positive feedback for people who are struggling, and maybe sharing that they've been through something similar. Or
Yeah, that is really true. I think is kind of the beauty of it, in the sense that, we do end up seeing ourselves in that other person's struggle, and then it also helps us realize that we're not isolated and alone.
So if someone wanted to get involved in one of these groups, how would they go about doing that?
Well, that's funny. I have cards printed out, and I was like, oh, I'm all out of cards in my wallet, but I know I've left you one before, so.
Right. So calling you is a good way
yeah,
to do it?
I don't really use my email address, I don't know if I just want to give my phone number out.
No, that's okay. I mean, is there, let's say somebody was interested in finding out more. Is there, I don't know if there's a website, or is there?
I mean, I did create a site for the men's group, but, the women's group, but that was years ago. And so I haven't really invested too much into any media, group, or I haven't created anything for it. It's just, the people that are meant to come organically start to come. So I've had other people that have been coming. They're like, oh, my friend's interested. Can I give you his number? So that's how it starts to kind of happen. So, I guess if someone's watching this and they're interested, they could contact you, and then
Sure.
You could give them my number, and then
it
would happen.
Sure, and I'll throw that out there. Our email address is info@castrovalleycompass.com. So if anybody's interested, please hit us up with an email, and I'll give you Walt's number. When do you guys meet?
We meet Thursday nights at 6:30, and we also meet right next to the Chabot Theater.
Okay.
Right next to Crush Comics, there's a little business park, and we meet there. And so we meet every other week, because it's rotating men's, women's. So they actually don't meet. They meet like once every 2 weeks.
Gotcha. So it's Thursday nights at, you said
6:30.
6:30. How long do the meetings typically last?
I'm really, I mean, you know, that's kind of like where I do struggle a bit with trying to control, you know, how much is shared and the time element. And as like the leader of the group, that's the one thing that I'm kind of like still trying to balance and figure out. Because, you know, when we're in that space, it's not a space that's actually measured by time, because it's more of like a spiritual space. And so the time element's really difficult to keep track of, because we're not really measuring what we're doing isn't measured by time.
So if somebody were to just come and show up at 6:30, they plan for a couple hours?
A couple hours, yeah, for sure.
Interesting. So it's every other week shifts from men's group to women's group?
Yeah.
Great. Is there a big difference between the two?
The great thing for me is, well, they get every other week and I get every week. So I'm like, that's a heck of a bonus for me. You know, just interestingly enough, the last couple of groups with both the men's and the women's, I've really noticed that, you know, since I've created it and I am the leader and I am the one that, you know, I'm energetically there and present. And so, you know, I do my best to just stay connected to my highest self. And so I'm starting to see that the men and the women are just starting to excel, and they're starting to mirror my energy and my behavior. Yeah, so they're actually like, you know, it just came to me 2 weeks ago in the men's meeting and then in the women's meeting as well, because, you know, it's almost like a child parent in a way. And so, you know, when you're just emitting this energy on a high level, then, you know, even subconsciously and spiritually, you know, they start to mimic that, because we all want to be loved and we all want to have peace and we all want to have joy. And so, you know, it just kind of accelerates itself on its own.
What gave you the idea to do this in the first place?
I was just really like I was delivering mail, and there was one particular hairdresser shop, and the women were in there and they kind of kept badgering me like, you should start a men's group. And I was like, oh, I don't know, you know. And so, you know, it like the name came to me. I made cards, and then Nate Miley's office said, oh, you can use our conference room. And so all the pieces just started to fall into place. And so I was like, well, I'm going to do it.
You said there's a name for it?
Yeah, the men's group I called Seeking Change.
Seeking Change.
Yeah, and that I actually did create on Facebook a site for that, but you know, I haven't really stayed in touch with it or promoted it much, you know. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, we moved from that space to a different space, you know.
Okay.
Because we had to close down because of COVID, of course.
So this started, how long have you been doing this?
You know, the men's group started in 2017. So we went a good, like 3 years, maybe 3.5. And then I reopened in, let's see, we're 25. I think it was 2022. Kind of like fuzzy on when I started it, restarted it.
So when it comes to the general vibe of each group, are they similar?
Yeah, I mean, you know, each one kind of takes on its own personality and, you know, kind of direction.
Right. I wonder, because as a man, I know that it's historically been, you know, the idea is that you deal with things on your own. You have to be a strong, independent male. Right. And so just the idea of coming to a group of other people and expressing your concerns or stressors, it seems almost unnatural for men. But it sounds like you get people to open up
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's also it's kind of a bad term, a trigger point. But after a couple of years after COVID, I'm careful with what I watch on the news. But there was a college shooting, and so I tend to stay away from anything that has a lot of pull and energy that can, like, I can connect to it and feel it. But I just decided to just jump in, and I was like, I am a part of this world, and this is a reality in the world. So I thought, I'm just going to dive in, and I read articles and I watched videos, and so it was, after COVID, after I experienced that, I just realized that I want to open up the men's group again, because there's been one female shooter, I think, in this, large capacity of shooters. Mm-hmm. Other than that one woman, it's always men.
Right.
Yeah, and men are just consistently pretty lost, more and more so, I think.
Well, things are a lot different than they were when we were growing up, that's for sure.
Yeah, we don't have the same. We're not the breadwinner, and our roles have changed. And, I think men might not be quite as flexible with, embracing that. And there's a lot of uncertainties about who we're supposed to be now.
Right.
Right.
So as far as the sharing from the women's group, is that come more naturally to the women? And
Yeah. Yeah. It's, they're a real gift, because they can just, like, the flow is pretty incredible because, they're already tuned in, but I had to work with that as well because I was like, whoa, it's kind of it's going pretty hard here. But it also gave me, a realization that there's members from 2017 that are in the men's group. And I came to view that as like just a giant tree that had really deep roots. And so, when somebody new comes into that group, it's already rooted in all the strength. And so it provides that opportunity for a man to just, be more vulnerable and open up. Yeah.
Interesting. So I suppose that's probably the strength of the group is to be able to open up eventually and share your sort of stressors or your difficulties.
Yeah.
So how long has the women's group been going on?
Well, I started it like 6 months before COVID, so it was just in the beginning phase. And then, like I said, I think it was 2020 when I restarted the men's, and then I got the women's going. So I'm not really great on the dates and all that. I don't know. The dates are more of the human thought in mind, and I'm just like, well, I started it when I started it. So.
Right. So let's go back to your mailman experience. I'd love to talk a little bit about what it was like to be a mailman in Castro Valley.
Yeah, so I was in Hayward for maybe 7 to 10 years delivering mail. So Castro Valley is not a city, so the postmaster of Hayward runs Castro Valley because there can't be a postmaster unless, unless it's an actual city, then a postmaster is assigned to that city. So we're able to bid on routes from Hayward to Castro Valley and vice versa. So you can transfer between the offices, and then not lose any seniority. And so that was kind of a bonus. So I started in Hayward and, enjoyed that. And then I was thinking, because I knew you were going to ask me about Castro Valley. So I remember I started on a Saturday, because for the post office, Saturday is actually a Monday. That's our week. That's how our week revolves. And so, I was loading my truck on Santa Maria, and then I heard that clock tower in the village. And I was just kind of struck at that moment that, in the Hayward office, it's on Santa Clara, and it's right by the police station, and there's all this traffic and noise and just so many more people. And so I was just kind of revisiting that moment when I was here and just noticing, the differences of just like this just felt so much more of a calm and peaceful place.
So was that like halfway into your career as a
I think,
mailman?
Let's see. No, it was probably like a third of the way in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were delivering mail in Castro Valley for, I think you said it was 20 years?
Yeah, it was. I think it was about 20. Yeah.
Wow. So any memories stand out as being particularly significant, whether it's, even just a one-on-one interaction with all your different people?
Here, I'll write a book.
Yeah, it sounds like you could.
Yeah.
I mean, you must have run into some pretty interesting people and had some experiences.
Yeah. And also, it's interesting, too, because I'll run into people because I had two different routes. And so the first route was over on Wisteria and Anita. And I'll run into people at Safeway, and they'll remember me,
Say, you look different. You're not wearing your postal uniform.
Yeah, or, my voice really gives it away. Because they're like, oh, they just know.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I just thought about the anticipation of the olden days when, say, you're waiting for a check to come in the mail.
Right.
That probably happens a lot less frequently now because people get direct deposit and there's a lot more online activity. Did you get to know anybody back then that was always waiting for the mail?
Yeah. That's, you just kind of touched a spot, Yeah, he was on unemployment. His name was Bob, and he always wore like blue jean overalls and, big beard and just kind of a big burly kind of guy. And he would I'd start at the far end of Wisteria by Somerset. And, he knew my routine and stuff. And so he was more midway through Wisteria, and he just kind of walk all the way down. Hey, Walt, I bother you for my check. And, I just, we tend to like judge people based upon their appearance and stuff. And, his appearance, he was just a big guy, and he was kind of closed off and stuff, but he was as sweet as could be. He was just like a really warm, kind, giving person, and you just wouldn't really think of that if you saw him, and definitely struggled with a lot of health issues, and also drank a lot, so, especially early on coming here to Castro Valley, I ended up that's kind of what got me to leading these groups, because, a lot of people just need to be heard and have somebody to, socialize with.
Yeah, I mean, isolation is a big deal in our world today, especially get this sort of false sense of connection through the internet, and you're dealing with people on a screen. That's not nearly the same as being face-to-face and dealing with people in person.
Yeah, you're so right about that.
So I'm curious, what about things like watching kids grow older? I imagine you must have seen families over the years with kids that are, brand new infants, and then as they grow older, end up moving off to college. I mean, do you have families that really got to know you well?
It seemed like I always got to know more of the parents. On my last route, I was there for 13 years, before I retired. So that wasn't like a 20-year span. So, in that time, the kids weren't always quite out of the house, but.
I remember one of the first times that we met, you dropped off my mail and we sat there and had sort of this spiritual, philosophical conversation. It was just like, wow, I didn't know that a mailman could be so interesting and engaging.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I noticed very early on with you, and I imagine that you take that sort of approach to these men's groups and the women's groups.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
When you talk about spirituality, is there? I'm not sure how to phrase this exactly, but is there a collective sense of spirituality in these groups that may not have to do with any specific religion, but more about just us as people?
Yeah. I think that's safe. That's safe to say. I've also realized, like, I'm a big believer in God, and I think we've gotten to the point of, like, in our society that if God is spoken about or talked about, that it ruffles people's feathers now. And so, my relationship isn't through a religion. It's more of just like a personal relationship with God, So, but I'm open to whatever is going to work for the groups and for all of us,
Yeah, and I think if you look at different religions, oftentimes it seems like they're very, very similar when it gets down to the essence of what's being taught is, love your neighbor and,
You're right.
Integrity, honesty, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really change from one religion to the next.
Yeah.
It just matters, like, what do you call God in your religion?
Yeah. I just want to say that that's part of what attracted me to you as a friend, because, like, love your neighbor and be kind. And, I felt that about you when I met you. Yeah, like, you were just a really good person. And so, also when we try to be really good and we practice that, then we draw like-minded people to us, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then I did my best to vibrate on that energy while I was delivering the mail. So I was also able to bring that out of other people just by kind of being myself,
Right. Well, it's funny because every time I've introduced you to somebody that's in my circle, they always come away saying, wow, that Walt, he's a really nice guy, really great. I remember when Katie and you were speaking, a couple months back, she just talked about, I love Walt. He's just such a good guy to talk to. You're very easy to open up to, and I think that's probably why the success of the men's and women's group is apparent. So when I think about groups like that, I think of, like, I was involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think about that shared difficulty of us alcoholics, struggling to get better, to get well.
Right.
And part of the powerful nature of that environment is there's people that have been sober for decades, and there are people that are coming off the street that are hungover from last night. And it was interesting to me that it's easy for someone to say, well, obviously this group is here for those newcomers because they need to see that this is possible. You can get sober, and there are people who have actually done it. But on the flip side of that, the people that have had a lot of time between their last drink, they are reminded of what it was like to be out there and drinking. And so it's just as powerful for the people that have been there for decades as it is for the brand new person. I wonder, is there any sort of similarities to that with your group? I mean, are there people that are wise and all-knowing, but they're still getting something out of the newcomers?
Yeah, definitely. Also, we have a good scope of age ranges too, and I also love the fact that people are really dedicated to come. Yeah, and if they're dedicated to come, that means that they want to work on and improve themselves, because ideally that's what it's all about, and also it's really interesting because where we're meeting is the office is below ground, so we have to walk down steps, and so we had a realization that we are actually removed from the earth and the human society because we're underground, and I was like, whoa.
Interesting.
That's pretty wild.
Underground meetings.
Yeah. I also wanted to add, too, that I had, in my first go-round, when we were meeting, we had somebody new come in, and he was just really like, I love this, and he was so excited, and he's like, we need to get more men in here. And he just kept pushing that agenda. And so then the more he pushed it, then the other guys were like, yeah, we should get more guys in here. And I was like, oh, well, then I started to question it. And then it just kind of came to me, I think it was like through my guides, maybe that was just like, it's not how many men you help, but it's how deeply you help each man. So it kind of creates the analogy of the rock in the pond, you know, that if this one man is being helped, then there's a ripple effect, you know.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's funny because oftentimes we don't see the ripples that we make in our own lives, but they are continuing whether we see them or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I think the powerful nature of us trying to be as true to ourselves and integral and honest that we can be so that we can spread those positive ripples. You know, one thing that comes to mind is that the ability for us to form friendships as we get older seems to go away. We're not in these situations like we were back when we were younger in school, where we could be interacting with people on an ongoing basis. And the older I get, the more I realize that I'm not in those situations like I used to be as I was younger. Is this a place, these meetings, where people have actually, you know, bonded and made friends, and they end up hanging out outside of the meetings?
We've talked about doing like spring or summer, just doing like a meetup and go for a hike, or just, you know, meeting outdoors, you know. I haven't really formalized that, but you know, the bond and the connection is pretty immediate, you know. Even like last night, we had people that didn't know each other, but by the end of the meeting, they knew each other. Yeah.
Right.
So I just also wanted to say that when you were talking about the power of the ripple effect, I just want to give to you that, you know, you feel the power of your ripple effect. Yeah, because, you know, you're just, I mean, not to say that you're just kind and good and giving, but, you know, you do touch so many people's lives doing what you do, you know.
Well, I appreciate that. That's really what made me realize my purpose on this planet was related to this ripple effect, in that when my kids were very young, I taught them how to play piano, just, you know, Mary Had a Little Lamb, Twinkle, Twinkle, these just very easy songs. And then we were having a family gathering, and I looked over, and my daughter was teaching her cousin how to play what I had taught her, unprompted. I didn't ask any of that to happen, but I saw, oh my God. And this light bulb went off, and I was like, okay, that's why I'm here, to make that happen over and over and over again. So,
like, I'm feeling that.
It was powerful, and I think I heard a quote recently. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it was something like, the most important day is the day you're born, and the second most important day is the day you realize why. Mm-hmm. And I thought, and that brought me right back to that moment at that gathering, and thinking, wow, and I didn't know how it was going to happen, because this was long before the music school. This was, you know,
right. I
had the production company, and you know, I was eventually volunteering, and that's what got me to realize, oh, teaching music, that's going to be it. And then, so it was very vague in nature, but it was extremely powerful to realize, okay, that's it. And I wonder how that's going to unfold. But that's, you know, that was probably 15 years ago, and now that's, you know, the music school is exactly helping me fulfill that mission, so to speak.
Right, right.
Definitely not been an easy process, but a very worthwhile one.
Yeah, and also, you know, finding your purpose.
Summer is heating up at Castro Valley School of Music. Get ready for a season full of music, creativity, and fun. We've got something for everyone. General music camps, as well as kids and keyboards for ages 5 to 12. Strum and sing camps for ukulele and vocals for ages 6 to 13. And teen rock band camps for ages 12 to 17. Camps run weekly all summer long, and they fill up fast. Get details and schedules at cvsom.com. Register by May 17th to save $50 with our early bird discount. Visit cvsom.com or call today 510-397-0721. Castro Valley School of Music, where summer sounds amazing.
Now back to more of the Castro Valley Compass. Brought to you by the Castro Valley School of Music.
These, I think it was, I don't know if this is actually Pablo Picasso, but it was saying that I saw is like the meaning of life. Let's see if I can get this right. Something like the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away.
Oh, that's
so
good.
It's like that whole like thought of, you know, this is what and we all have our own different
Right.
you know, strengths that we can cultivate, so to speak, and that's the beauty of the world we live in, is there are people who love things that, like, for example, I can't stand doing paperwork and bookwork and bookkeeping, but I've found some people who absolutely love that, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect, you know.
Yeah.
But that idea that we're all unique and that we have this sort of ability to combine our forces to make this world a more beautiful place, and that's kind of what I see with what you're doing with these groups.
Yeah. And what you're doing with the school too.
Yeah, it's funny to be able to recognize that in other people early on. Like, that's what I recognized in you, is the genuine nature of your spirit, and, you know, being so positive, and that it's just funny how things unfold over time, and then bring us to right here we are right now.
That's right.
Do you see anything changing in Castro Valley? How long have you lived in Castro Valley? You live here?
Yeah. I think it was around early 90s or so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
30-ish years?
Yeah.
Okay. What have you noticed as being some of the biggest changes here in Castro Valley?
I know one thing is that it seems like we certainly have a lot more homeless people. Yeah, and I also, you know, part of my route was over by CBS and KFC and,
Right.
you know, that creek there. And so I got to, you know, get to know some of the homeless people, and, you know, my heart really just went out for them, because once again, you know, as I started to make friends with them, they never really asked me for money, because I was just there as a friend. Mm-hmm. And I also realized that they just get so much negative and judgment energy from society. Yeah, like they don't get very little positive feedback or anybody that's real to them.
Right.
So, you know, I just know, you know, it hurts to see that the population has grown, you know, and it's just not here, of course. It's just these times are so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, things have changed a lot, especially in the last 5 years. But from a standpoint of the drag, sort of the main street that we have here, I mean, we've had some new developments. That the old Daughtry store has been converted to the marketplace, and that seems to be a positive place for people to gather. You know, it's funny. I heard they recently rescinded the law against no cruising anywhere in California. I don't know if you heard about that, but I see all these no U-turn signs on the boulevard, and I'm thinking, wonder if those were placed there because they didn't want people cruising the boulevard, you know, back in the 80s and 90s. But as far as like public events, do you? We ran into each other at I think it was the car show, or it wasn't the fall festival.
I think it was the fall festival.
Oh, was it? Okay. Like those kind of activities, it's great to see that stuff coming around regularly now and growing every year.
Yeah.
Is there a certain event that you particularly enjoy going to?
I do love the cruise night, you know. It's a really great time, you know. And I also noticed, too, that it brings such a diversity of types of people, and everybody's there for the same reason, just to have fun and enjoy it. Yeah. I think that's a really powerful, meeting. And I think also that, the Chamber of Commerce has just expanded, and, things are being promoted and things are happening a lot more now,
Yeah.
We're just growing,
Yeah, and it's definitely good to see. It's almost like there's I hesitate to use the word celebrity, but there are people around town they're well known for being active in the community and helping facilitate these kind of gatherings. And I think that's kind of fun to be, involved in a certain way, but also recognize the beauty of everyone else's contributions.
Yeah, there's like a electricity or a buzz, It's definitely like on.
Yeah.
And it's growing.
So do you ever feel like do people recognize you still from having delivered the mail for all those years?
Yeah.
What's that like?
It's really funny too, because I depending on where I'm at, what mood I'm in, I'll see somebody, but I won't really approach them, depending on my time schedule and all that. But even I was driving through the village and the other day, and I saw two people I just knew, and then I did the back catalog of where did I know them from, and I was like, oh, I know who that is. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's funny. There's a mailman. I don't know if you ever knew Eddie. Eddie was the mailman who delivered our mail when we were up on the corner of East Castro Valley Boulevard and Center Street. And he had unfortunately got bit by a dog, and he had to go on retirement early. But I saw him at one of these events, and he came up and was like, "Hey, Shane," and I could not, for the life of me, place him because he wasn't wearing his postal uniform. And he's like, "Hey, Eddie," and then he reminded me, I was like, "Oh yeah, Eddie, how's it going?" It's kind of funny when people are separated from that context of when you typically would see them.
Out of uniform.
Exactly. Like, who are you again? You sure do look familiar, but I can't place your face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really I like that this electrical feeling, this electricity of and the buzz of what's the Chamber of Commerce is creating, and just it's kind of expanding on its own, and it's a good thing for our community,
Definitely, yeah. And the chamber had the first time an award ceremony about 2 months ago. I don't know if you heard about this, or the best of, Castro Valley, Eden area.
Yeah.
And man, that was a really great event. There were hundreds of people there. We were lucky enough to win best music lessons. But the vibe in that place was just incredible. So much positivity.
Yeah. It's good. It's funny how I think it started out really small, but it's just kind of like blossoming now.
Yeah. I remember reading about Castro Valley being a bedroom community, and I thought, well, what is that? And so I was looking it up, and actually it refers to the fact that there's not much to do here. It's just where people sleep. They go elsewhere for nightlife or for work or for, a variety of different things, and it's nice to see that we're becoming more of a, I don't want to call it destination, but you don't have to leave Castro Valley to shop, for example. And there's a lot of great places here. And nightlife is not booming, but there are some things going on.
Right.
And that's good to see that growing. So you lived here for 30 plus years. Is there anything that stands out to you as being, I hesitate to use the word, the best thing about Castro Valley, but is there anything that you would, if you were describing Castro Valley to somebody who'd never been here before and you wanted to show the positive side of the town, is there anything that comes to mind?
I mean, I don't think it's really changed that much. I think it's still a kind of a nice, quiet place, and it's a great community. And I think now, like we've talked about with this new buzz happening, it does seem like it's just not necessarily growing with more people, although there's more people here, but just, a better vibe, so to speak.
Yeah.
More positive energy that's being shared.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if the traffic on the boulevard is an indication,
Yeah,
it's getting worse and worse depending on the time of day you go out there. But
it is true.
there's definitely a lot more people out.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if there's anything we haven't talked about that you wanted to discuss during our interview today. Is there anything that you wanted to go over?
I'm also the woman who graciously allows me to have the meetings. I'm going to contact her, and then also my plan is to have a meeting on Monday night, and we'll start at 6:30 and we'll end at 7:30. And so it's just going to be an hour-long meeting, and what the purpose is going to be is to do like a 20-plus minute meditation. So, and then, after we're done, we can get up and chit-chat, but, more focus on just the meditation alone. And so, because, running the groups does take energy, and I've thought about running both groups in the same week. And so then I kind of came up with this idea. And so people just coming to meditate and, be quiet and calm, that feels like something that, would be really effective. And also people coming for that specific reason, then the meditation could actually work even more powerful because their intention is to go to meditate, right?
What would you say to somebody who says, I've tried that, I can't do that, I can't meditate?
It's really different in a group setting. Yeah, because, the energy it's vast and it's so much bigger. And so I'm finding that people are more easy to connect to that energy in a group setting. Yeah.
So is it a guided meditation?
I did create some guided meditations, and then sometimes we'll just have it be kind of silent. I think for, this group in a 20-minute plus, I'll probably use some music. But, I tend, in the groups, I tend to just have us meditate more in silence. Yeah, because the person that I follow, that's what he teaches, on YouTube. And so he said that, if you're in Hawaii and you're going to meditate and you've meditated to this certain type of music, well, you have to find it. And so it's more about just you doing the meditation in silence. It makes it more powerful.
And what do you tell people when they, and I've experienced this myself, so I'm one of these people who would like to hear your answer. When you're meditating, what do you do when all of a sudden you're thinking about everything, what's for dinner, what you did for work that day, or, deadlines, bills due? What do you tell people who are struggling with that sort of thing in meditation?
You're quieting yourself, and when your thoughts come in, I just recently heard, which is a great way to describe it, like, think of your thoughts as like a passing cloud, and just, have the thought come and go. And so, you're not trying to push them away, and you're not trying to control them, and you're not putting a label that my thoughts are bad. You just allow them to come and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy all the time, but I think that's good advice.
I mean, it's a practice. So it's just like anything, the more you practice it, the easier it starts to get.
Right. Have you ever done a sound bath?
Well, I have a sound bowl that I use, and I'm finding that like people are having experiences when I'm playing that bowl, like kind of somewhat out of body, and some people have seen colors. And so I have done a sound bath with numerous, one person playing numerous bowls. I just have one bowl, but it seems like it's really effective.
Yeah, definitely. I recently read a book listened to a book, I should say, where they're talking about the spiritual healing powers of sound, and at the end of it is a 15-minute sound bath. So I started meditating to this 15-minute sound bath. I happen to meditate every morning, or at least try to, for 15 minutes, so it was a perfect fit. But what I felt was those thoughts that arise in a weird way, they get on those sound waves and then they leave my head. It's it's really interesting, this sort of sense of letting go, but letting go with a vibration that's sort of passing through at the same time. I don't know if I'm describing that very well, but it's like, and the one thing I did learn is that if I listen to the same sound bath too often, it becomes predictable, like a song. And I think, okay, well, here comes the last part. And I don't want to be putting those thoughts in my head when I'm trying to meditate. But something about that, the nature of the vibrations of the sound and the randomness of it all. I don't know what they're using, chimes, but bowls like you're talking about.
Right.
It's a pretty interesting process. And for me, it's helped with my meditation.
Yeah, that's really good. I love the fact that what works for each one of us can be very individual.
Yep.
Yeah. And I also like that, you're just kind of allowing yourself to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, that's the hardest part about meditation is that we give up control. And, control is what we've been taught and who we're supposed to be. So, that's what makes it so difficult, because it's going completely counter to what we've been taught and what we think we're supposed to be, like in charge.
Right. I can control my feelings.
Right.
Maybe not always. What about, I'm curious about movement, things like yoga, or is there any of that tied into your groups, or?
Yeah, it just depends on, sometimes I do tapping, which is, there's meridians that you tap on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just, when we're tapping on these meridians, there are specific points, and that kind of helps release whatever it is a bit clogged.
Mm-hmm.
And so just depending on if, before each meeting, I kind of get a sense of what I'm kind of guided to implement. But I do, much like what you said about the meditation, when you do it over and over, I try to vary every meeting a little bit different, because then, it's unique that way.
Yeah, you don't want too much predictability.
Yeah, and then at the end too, in the closing meditation, I actually have us do some qigong stuff.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah, because I also realize that if we're absorbing the energy, it can, make you tight.
Right.
Right. So we just do some inhale and breathing exercises, and that kind of helps loosen us up.
That's great.
Yeah. Because that qigong and those type of movements are really effective, and it's also interesting too because all those movements are very slow, and we're a fast-paced society, so it's very counter to what, once again, who we're kind of tied into.
Right.
Well, I got to get there quick.
Yep. Maybe not now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I actually took a qigong class in college, and that's what sort of started me off onto this whole endeavor into Chinese medicine and acupuncture. I actually used to work as a acupressurist at an acupuncture clinic. So before the people would get their acupuncture, I would do the massage.
Oh, wow.
And work with them. My teacher was the one who taught me qigong, and that it's amazingly powerful that for something that's so subtle, like you say, the movements are not big grandiose movements, but they sure do tie directly into those meridians and get that energy flowing.
That's really, I didn't know that about you, and that's really awesome because, I love the fact that, especially, being further along now, I sometimes I'll go back and look at my past and realize these were moments where I was on the right track. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these moments help guide me to where I'm at today, much like you doing the massage before the acupuncture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like your door was already opened.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder, like, why did I even take that class? What prompted me to take this Chinese medicine class as a 22-year-old? And I don't know the answer to that necessarily outside of it was just seemed interesting.
Well, we all have guides, and our guides are always guiding us, even when we're lost in our thoughts and rattled and upset and worried. That our guides don't stop guiding us. So especially at an age of 22, you didn't have all the same pressures quite yet as being an adult and married and having kids. So I feel like your guides just stepped in and guided you to take that class.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it was definitely an important one for me as far as being able to deal with the stress of college life, and then even afterwards, have you ever heard of autogenic training?
I kind of heard of it, but I'm not really familiar with it.
That was another one of these classes I took in college that I look back and I think, why did I even take that? But it was so powerful. It's basically self-hypnosis.
Oh.
And it's all, in a way, it's tricking our brains into triggering actual physical relaxation. So without going into too much detail, it talks about, or one of the very first steps in the process is you sit at the end of a chair and you sort of like balance yourself with your chin down, your head, and you're sort of in this relaxed position, and you start repeating over and over, my right arm is heavy. My right arm is heavy. And then after you do that for 30 seconds, you say, my left arm is heavy. And even just doing it right now, I can feel the muscles unlocking because I've done it so many times that it just basically says, oh yeah, that's what's supposed to happen now. Your arm is heavy, but the reason it's heavy is because you're letting go of all these muscles. And then it goes further into this, like, my breath is calm and relaxed. My breath is calm and relaxed. And you go through the whole body. It's really an interesting process of, I would call it self-hypnosis.
Wow.
But again, it's not like I'm saying I'm relaxing my arm. You just say my arm is heavy, and my legs are heavy and warm. So it's an interesting, like, progression of phrases that you say that build upon one another, and then over a certain amount of time, it becomes this sort of triggering response. When you just now, when I just said my right arm is heavy, I could totally feel my whole right side relax. So it's an interesting. I don't know what you'd call it, science.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd probably be interested in that if you see it. I got a book not too long ago about autogenic training, and it basically goes through and describes all those different steps.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I'm reminded of that, our words and not only what we think, but what we speak. Yeah, there's so much power there.
Totally.
Yeah, like, power, like, once you start to have that self-awareness about putting thought into everything that you say and speak, I don't have the words to really describe that, but it's more about your intention of what you're going to say and the meaning behind it, whatever comes out.
I remember when you and I first met, I had just learned this, saying or concept, and I shared it with you. Well, I remember distinctly you standing on the other side of that counter and me at the front desk. I had learned that people don't remember what you say. People remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. So it's this notion of intent and, sort of energetic expression. You may say something very, mean, and they may not remember what you said, but they sure do remember not feeling good after meeting with somebody, or the flip side of that would be, I don't remember what they said, but I sure did like interacting with this person, so I'd love to see them again, that type of thing.
Oh, that's really interesting because it's, through the power of your words, that's what you leave with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And that reminds me of the sort of self-talk. I used to be very belligerent to myself. I would say, you stupid idiot, I can't believe you would do that. And it was just part of my nature.
Right.
And then I met a woman years ago, and she heard me talking to myself in that way, and she stopped me and she said, don't say that to him. I like that person. So almost like I was a separate person, and she's like, I don't want you talking to him like that. And I thought, but that's me. But it really hit home for me. I was like, okay, because that does actually make a huge difference. You know,
Right.
I'm reinforcing the fact that I think I'm dumb or can't do things right. It's like, well, it matters how you talk to yourself. And so that was a big opening for me to kind of realize that I should be nice to that guy.
Yeah, that's good. I love like you having these insights of your spiritual awakening, you know. It's really powerful, you know. I think that's really great because now you're able to look back and realize, you were tuned in and you were open to that and you weren't pushing it away or creating a wall. You just allowed what she said. You took it.
Right.
You took it in.
Yeah, and I see other people, especially young men that I work with, one-on-one and music lessons and that sort of thing, and that boys have a real predisposition to reinforcing negative thoughts about themselves. And whenever I can, I chime in and say, hey, you're doing great. You know, this is not an easy process. If it was easy, everybody would play guitar. If it was easy, everybody would play piano. It's not easy. So please give yourself some grace and realize that you're not going to be perfect. In fact, that's what it takes us to learn, is making these mistakes and then learning from them. So it's, I don't know, I think that's probably a powerful part of what I've learned as I've gotten older, especially as I work with younger people,
Right.
Particularly young men. Speaking of which, how big are these groups that you lead? Or they fluctuate in size?
Yeah, usually like 3 to, 7 people,
Okay, so relatively small,
Yeah.
intimate.
I kind of love the small groups because, they can be really, when they're really intimate, they can be really like intense,
Right.
And, I'm also like pretty amazed that a couple of new women that came, one of them we had 2 groups where it was just her and I, and everybody dropped out. And then the other woman, we had a group together. It was just her and I. And so the thing that I've recognized is that who's ever meant to be in the meetings that night is meant to be there. And so, once again, speaking that and putting that out to the group, then that unites us on an energetic level that we're all meant to be there for this meeting.
Right.
And so it was just really interesting how, the universe just kind of like lined up that I was meeting with these couple new women just on a one-on-one basis. And, they had a lot of baggage. And, it was so much easier to do it just on a one-to-one basis, And then after that, I like to think of it this way, that when we come in, we're all carrying a backpack, and it's not only full, it's stuff's coming out of it. And then especially the first couple of times, you're cutting that weight because we've released what we've been carrying for years and years, and a lot of that is like what you were talking about, the belittling of ourselves and the self-talk, the negative self-talk that we do. And so, once you start to release it, then when the next times you come in, you're lighter because you've let go of that,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how second nature that can become, especially if our parents talk to us that way and we sort of mirror what we've been learning through them.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that it's still possible, even in our old age.
Yeah.
We can change and get better.
Yeah, it's so true. And, also like your self-recognition of, like with the woman telling you, you should be nice to that person. And then you're like, like you said, a light bulb moment,
Yep.
I think those are so valuable, It's also reminding me too that unfortunately, especially with our youth, they're so hooked into technology that those light bulb moments are becoming kind of less and less,
Yeah, it's, the whole notion of being bored is sort of going away because we have these distractions in front of us everywhere. So the ability to be bored, I just think of things like summertime when I was a little kid and we were, out running around, riding our bikes, making up games, this kickball, baseball kind of, make up these interactions for ourselves with our friends. Like everybody's kind of in a more isolated sense, so to speak, because we've got these, gadgets that distract us, and I'm guilty as anyone else too. But that definitely, I think, is going to have a big effect as the generations continue growing older, that, that was just part of life.
Right.
I tell my kids sometimes that was before we had cell phones. They're like, what do you mean?
Right.
There was a time before cell phones.
I do, have great hope for, human nature. And I do put my energy into us figuring this dilemma out. Yeah, because, it is toxic. It can pull you in. It can absorb your time. It can absorb your energy and yourself. But, we've overcome so much in our human span of, being a civilization, that I just believe that we'll figure it out.
Well, I think there's some important steps that are already starting to happen now with schools that are not allowing cell phones in the classroom and that kind of thing.
Right.
I couldn't imagine trying to teach a class where there's people, with their basically a computer in their pockets that are easily distracted. It must be extremely difficult for teachers.
Right.
But that's part of, I think, the solution is limiting access to that sort of thing, particular times of the day.
Yeah. And, it's kind of like the internet's just like the Wild Wild West, and now it's just blown up and it's open. And so, now we kind of have to figure out and gauge how much of that we want to allow ourselves to be absorbed with.
Right. Yep.
It's a heck of a learning curve.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of it is learning about ourselves. Like, how can we modify our behavior so that we're actually being productive? I mean,
good. That's really powerful. I love that.
My son is a good example. He basically, deleted all these apps from his phone, and he's like, doesn't go on the social media apps anymore. So I'm like, wow, that's very mature.
Right.
I wonder if I could do that.
I have run across, younger people, and I'm finding that the movement is already afoot. The news doesn't really, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but, the government wants to keep us in control, and so they're not promoting our own self-power and our self-individualism. And so, if we all step into the power and who we're meant to be and what we're meant to do, then we won't need the government.
Right.
So I'm finding more and more that there's a movement, underground movement afoot, that's already starting. Well, our system is collapsing as we speak. So,
well, it's interesting to me because I think about something like alcohol consumption, and that's going down for like young people. I've realized that's some pretty powerful self-awareness for what used to be a very high peer pressure activity when I was in high school. It was
right.
Like, that was just kind of part of being in the cool crowd is you drank.
Right.
But now it's thankfully it looks like that's sort of reversing.
Yeah, and I also think too that like we talked about being open to receive things, because like the news isn't promoting that, the news just promotes more worry and fear. And so it's funny how when I've been more open to knowing that there's a movement afoot, then like I'll run into somebody that's like 21 and he's like, oh yeah, me and my friends, we're off all social media and we're, like it's
right.
real,
Yep. It's a good sign.
Yeah.
Hopefully that continues.
Yeah. We always have to have hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you do, and I do need to make it down to one of your men's groups one of these days.
Yeah.
I would love to check it out and be a part of it, because it sounds like a very positive experience. And just to plug it one more time, if anybody is interested in getting involved, you can send us an email here at info@castrovalleycompass.com, and we will head you over to Walt's direction.
Yeah, definitely. I through the process too, I was like, do I have to interview people before they come? No, I don't think you're going to fit. I was like, no, relax. And, I think if it works for people, they'll know, And even just having you and I, have this exchange of energy and, that in itself will promote somebody. They'll be able to feel what we're feeling together.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'd love to be a part of that and light the spark, so to speak.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Drop the pebble in the river or the pond.
It's one of the things I really wanted to address, that I was just so grateful to have, you invite me and just to have this meeting. And I also love too, like how we didn't prep ahead of time with what to say, and
right.
we just allowed everything to flow very organically. And, that's such a huge gift,
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think, the work that I'm doing, you're doing as well. I've realized in, meeting other teachers and, spiritual teachers, I'm like, well, I want what they have. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, then I can't really be me if I'm going to model myself after who they are.
Right.
And that's what I love about our individual purpose, is it only fulfills us, right? So it's like really specific and finding that out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Walt. I really appreciate it. It's always good talking to you.
Yeah, and you definitely are finding your purpose. So I'm really proud of you, and I love that about you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I know we'll have you back again sometime soon, so we'll continue this conversation.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Walt.
Okay.
All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Walt. He's a fascinating guy and very interesting to talk to. And if you'd like to get involved in his support groups, again, you can send us an email at info@castrovalleycompass.com. And that's the same email you can use if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you've got suggestions for any guests that you might like to see on the show. info@castrovalleycompass.com. And until next time, I've been Shane Sharkey. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Castro Valley Compass, navigating your week through Castro Valley. Do you have an idea for the show, or would you like to get involved? We'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@castrovalleycompass.com. That's info@castrovalleycompass.com. See you next time on the Castro Valley Compass, brought to you by the Castro Valley School of Music.